Hey everybody, Austin back again with another Longplay video. Today it's going to be Axelay for the Super Nintendo. Axelay is a both vertically scrolling and a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up for the Super Nintendo. It was one of the few games on the system, as well as one of the few games of, well, I guess the early 90s that actually allowed you to play with a variety of gameplay styles. So for instance, vertically scrolling and horizontally scrolling. And the game's kind of interesting for it. Whether it's actually better for it is another story entirely altogether, but I won't get into that in this video. Again, this is going to be a long play of Axelay. The game takes about 30 minutes to complete. It's a relatively challenging game. It starts off fairly tame, but it does pick up in difficulty about halfway through the game, and it is a game that's probably going to require practice depending on your skill level. For those of you guys that are experts at the genre, there is also a hard mode, which is actually hard. You know, it's a hard mode that is, you know, true to its namesake. And I actually had originally recorded hard mode as well on top of the normal mode playthrough, which you're going to see here. But I ended up getting destroyed like halfway through hard mode. And I was just like, I'm not going to include that in the long play. So you guys will not be able to see that. But, you know, if you're daring enough, you can try that on your own time. So this is the introduction here. It just gives you a bit of story and whatnot. It shows off some graphical effects and whatnot. And we're going to jump into the options menu real quick. And I'm going to do two things here. I'm going to raise the brightness of the game up. I don't know why it gives you a brightness option, but it is there. But I'm also going to increase the trigger speed, which I just did. And the trigger speed is extremely important. You want to max that out completely, because if you leave it on default settings, your firing rate is set at a very specific rate, and that very specific rate is too slow to be useful, I think. So you basically max out the trigger rate, and when you get closer to enemies, your firepower will come out so much faster, and you'll kill enemies a lot faster as a result. I'm not sure why they gave you that option in the game, but it is there, and to get the most enjoyment out of this game, I highly recommend cranking the trigger rate up all the way. So one of the cool things about Axelay is that you have 3 weapons on hand at all times, and you can scroll through those. Right now, I've got this weapon that sort of can circle around you depending on how long you've held the button down. And you've also got missiles for each weapon as well. So every weapon has both its main firepower as well as its secondary missile firepower. Kind of like the Gradius series, where in Gradius you've always got your main firepower, but you've always got your missiles as well. As long as, well, at least in Gradius, as long as you've gotten the missile power up. So by default, I think you press B to fire, and then you press A to use your missiles. And you have to hold down both if you want to have both of them come out at the same time. So my first firepower item on the left is actually a straight ahead shot, and the one on the right is a really dinky shot but with really powerful missiles. So you use the firepower item on the far right if you want to take down like bigger enemies really quickly, because the missiles in this game are really powerful. At least the powerful missiles are. The missiles for your first 2 weapons are generally pretty weak, but they are there. They can take down popcorn enemies and help out with bigger enemies as well, as long as you're using your main firepower at the same time. So, Axelay it's an interesting game. You know, for the longest time, I didn't really like this game. Since doing this long play, it's grown on me a little bit. I'm still not really sure where I stand with my opinions on it overall. Man. and to sort of clear things up, this was actually the first week I have ever beaten this game. I played Axelay back in the mid-1990s when it was relatively new. And I never got very far in it. I just never felt compelled enough to continue playing through the game. And so in this last week or so, I actually forced myself to sit down and try to beat the game, because I know that a lot of people rave about this game. A lot of people really like this game. And so I kind of wanted to see what all the fuss was about. So I made myself sit through it, and I'm still mixed on it. I still don't, maybe I just need to play it more, but one of the things that to me is interesting yet weird at the same time is this graphical style right here. you know, you've got this like this graphical style that tries to simulate like a horizon and like a sloping planet, and it's kind of weird. Like, I mean, maybe it's just that it's 20 years later, maybe this looked badass back when it came out, but it's odd. It takes a little while to get used to. So, and you have to play multiple types of these stages throughout the course of the game. The game actually alternates between vertically scrolling and side-scrolling. So after this boss, we're going to get to a side-scrolling stage, which I definitely like the side-scrolling stages a lot more. They don't feel as weird, I guess. And the action is a little more straightforward. Not straightforward, but the action's, I'd say, a little bit faster paced on the side-scrolling stages. There's less, like, open space, and there's more creative level design on the side-scrolling stages. And you'll see exactly what I mean once we get there. They're pretty well-designed stages, I think, for the most part. So, here's our first boss. You don't want to touch the boss at all. If your bullet doesn't go through him, then you can die when you touch it. So that's actually one rule of thumb in this game, is if your bullets don't go through it, don't touch it, because you will die instantly. And that is the case for that boss and pretty much any boss in the game. And but yeah, that boss, you got to hit him just dead center. A lot of the bosses in this game really aren't that, at least the vertically scrolling bosses, they aren't that difficult. It's usually just shoot them straight ahead, dead center, and you do damage. The side-scrolling bosses, on the other hand, have very specific weak points, and you have to actually hit those weak points. Well, I mean, I guess the vertically scrolling bosses do as well, but they don't usually take as much strategy as the side-scrolling bosses do. And you'll see what I mean as we progress, you know, through the rest of the game. Like, this boss on level 2 takes more strategy than that last boss we fought, and you'll see what I mean once we get there. So yeah, we're on our first side-scrolling level, and I really like the graphics on the side-scrolling stages. It's just more traditional pixel art. It looks really nice, and you know, this part right here isn't doing it justice. But later on in the game, in the level, actually even right here, you got that background that's sort of like scrolling up. It almost looks like, I'm guessing, some kind of like city or cityscape or something like that. I have no idea, but it looks really cool. And this level definitely has a lot going on in the background and stuff like that later on. It's really neat. But this, I don't know if this game was, you know, I don't know if any of the guys that worked on the Gradius series worked on this game. If you know, post some comments below in the comment section, let me know. But the side-scrolling stages have a lot in common with the Gradius series, from, you know, enemy placement and stuff like that. It's... If you're a fan of the Gradius series, I can picture you enjoying this game quite a bit. There's definitely some similarities between the two franchises. So, and at this point on in the game, it's really good to try to switch through your weapons and whatnot. Some weapons are better in certain situations than others. And one of the new weapons I got on this stage, actually, every time you beat a level, you open up a new weapon type that you can equip on the next stage, and thereon. The one on this one is a forward-dropping bomb or missile, which is extremely powerful, and it's good to actually use that on this stage if you can, and the other side-scrolling stages. First is these big guys here with the arms that come out. They take a lot of hits, actually, and you can attack them in different ways. You know, you can do what I'm doing and use my sort of spread shot here, and just get up really close, so you're shooting them really quickly because you've maxed out your trigger rate. Remember that. But using these missiles are very useful as well on those same enemies. It's just, these missiles are extremely powerful, and if you get up close, it's just, you can deal some serious damage with them. This straight ahead shot, I used to think was the best, but I think it's actually probably the worst weapon of your main attack powers. It's just, I don't know, it only shoots out about 3 projectiles. Unless you're up close to an enemy, you have to wait for them to go off screen before they'll fire some more. And so it's not the most useful weapon in the game. You have to really get up close to enemies and sort of point blank them, as it's called in shmup turns, and for it to be extremely useful. So My preferred shot is sort of the wavy spread shot that rotates around you, and unfortunately I lost it. And one of the things that, you know, happens in this game is if you get touched by bullets, you lose the weapon that you have. The weapon that you have acts as a shield, essentially. So you actually have 3 shields. And once you lose all your weapons, the next hit will kill you. So technically you could take up to 4 hits before you die, if you do it correctly. Now, if you're on a weapon that is out, and then you get hit by a bullet, you die. Because that weapon's out, you don't have the safety of that shield. So that is something to keep in mind. Axelay is definitely a shmup that has strategy to it, and you have to keep these things in mind if you want to survive in this game. And that could be taken for better or for worse depending on your tastes in shmups. I prefer shmups with less strategy, generally, you know. But I could see why people really enjoy this game for aspects like that. So again, there's a little more strategy here to this boss as well. He's got this, well, I just killed him, but basically that whole black cover on top of him generally can't be shot through. Although if you have the forward dropping missiles, they can actually, their blast radius is so large, they'll sort of like seep through the black cover and touch his weak point, and you'll do damage to him. But generally speaking, you have to kind of wait for him to shoot upwards and then get down below and shoot him straight on if you want to use your normal laser beams or something like that. So again, this game alternates between the top-down and the side-scrolling. And on this level, actually, we also got our blue laser power-up, which is an interesting weapon. It's got some slight homing properties. Unfortunately, I just lost it, but it's got some slight homing properties. It shoots straight ahead primarily, but it also has these lasers that come out to the sides occasionally. They don't come out as frequently as the ones that just go straight ahead. And the ones that come out from the sides actually will home in on enemies, but they kind of home in when they want to. They don't always like home in when you want them to. I don't rely on that weapon as a homing weapon. Actually, I don't really use any homing weapons in this game now that I think about it. I don't think are there any other homing weapons? I think actually the blue laser might be the only actual homing weapon in the game, now that I think about it. But I don't rely on it as a homing featured weapon. I actually just get up close, right in front of the enemies, and just, you know, since I've got the rapid fire rate all the way set all the way up, you know, these lasers will come out really, really quickly. So I don't rely on the homing aspect. As you can see, the lasers are going all over the place. They're not really that useful because they're not that powerful. They're not that strong. You really need to get right in front of the enemies and just pummel them with like every shot you've got really, really quickly. And that's really the case with pretty much every other weapon in the game, though. For the weapons to be the most effective, you have to get up close to the enemies. This guy, I'm going to play it a little bit safe because as you can see, he comes all the way down to the bottom of the screen. He has the weird scaling effect of the background too, which is trippy and really weird. I don't know why they did that, but I don't know. It's interesting. So yeah, here we am. Here we are. I got up close to the guy. As you can see, I defeated his second half pretty quickly once I blew off his main turrets. And so in this game, for any weapon to be effective, you really got to get up close. And you also have to, again, make sure you go to the options menu and boost your fire rate all the way up. Otherwise, getting up close isn't going to really do a whole lot. So the stock fire rate is set to where if you're all the way down at the bottom of the screen, you know, your shots are going to constantly go, but they're going to have farther spacing between each shot. So it's like, you know, whereas if I get up close and shoot an enemy point blank with this weapon, it's just like really fast. If I get up and try to hit an enemy with the same weapon up close with a medium fire rate, it's going to be like tut 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 tut. So imagine versus tut 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 tut. It's a rhythm thing, and every hit counts in this game. So, you know, when my firing rate is higher, I am guaranteed to kill enemies faster. Twice as fast, actually, as long as I'm like right up close to the enemies. So And that's the benefit to boosting your fire rate up in this game. And it really, really helps some bosses too. Trust me on this one, guys. Like, you can take bosses down like that if you play them just right. But it's risky, though. It's risky, but there is some reward in playing risky in this game, fortunately. Getting up close and just point blanking the bosses. Now, I don't remember if I die at this boss or not. I think I do. I have no idea. This boss is a little tricky. You've got to blow off the little sort of like nubs on the saucer. And you can't really tell that you're actually doing damage, but there is a faint noise that's being made every time I touch or, attack the little nubs that are spinning around. And same thing when when he goes to his second form here, there is a sound that's made as well. It's very faint. But on this form, there's some graphical effects that let you know that you're actually doing damage to him. See, I find it interesting that on this boss, they didn't, he's just like, you know, a typical sprite, right? He's not deformed like that mini-boss was. I don't know why they did that for the mini-boss. It actually makes the mini-boss a little more challenging, I think, because he looks larger than he probably would be as, like, just a still sprite, like that boss was. So here we go. We've got our final missile power-up here, and this one basically just drops directly below you. And generally speaking, it's not extremely useful in the game, but on this level, it seems like this level was kind of designed for that weapon in a way. This level also has some tricky moments to it, and I'll sort of explain those. There are these guys on the ground that spit out enemies, kind of like Gradius style, and so you kind of want to get up close and just destroy those, otherwise they just keep spawning enemies. The enemies at this point do start shooting a lot, so this is where bullets become very, very common. You actually have to start dodging, like actual dodging. There's also these things in the ground here, and they have arms that sort of just come out really, really fast, as you can see. And they are risky. You can destroy them, but there's a downside to destroying them, and that they release these, like, sort of, I don't even know what you would call them, these, like, bacteria kind of being, and they actually come after you, and they latch onto your ship and drag you down to the ground. The more of them that are on you, the faster your ship will get dragged down to the ground. It's an interesting concept, but it does get kind of annoying. And as you can see here, we've actually got bullets now. And what's actually really interesting about this game is it doesn't slow down nearly as much as other shmups do on the Super Nintendo, like Gradius 3 is a shining example of a shmup that slows down a lot on the system. Axelay manages to keep a lot going on screen without slowing down to an absolute crawl. It does slow down, don't get me wrong, it's not perfect, but it's a lot better in that regard than several other SNES shmups are. So those sort of like spiky puffball things that explode, you have to be extremely careful with those things. Preferably you want to just destroy them as fast as you can, because if you destroy them before they explode, they won't shoot out homing spikes on you. And the problem is, those homing spikes they send out, they don't act as regular projectiles. They act like they're a background object, and they will kill you in one hit. So even if you have all three weapons, they kill you in one hit. You have no shield basically against them, and it's a little frustrating the first couple times you play the game. If you don't know that, you out of nowhere you're just dying. You're like, why am I dying out of nowhere? Like, regular bullets don't kill me in one hit. Like, why is this killing me in one hit? I don't get it, right? So you have to be very, very careful about that. And these sort of puffball things are, I don't know if puffball is probably not the right term, but those guys actually, yeah, they spread out some bullets whenever you destroy them. These guys aren't too bad. They do fire at you, but they do take a lot of hits, like most enemies in this game. That's one of the other things I wanted to note about this game is every enemy takes a good amount of hits in this game, which is why you really want to take advantage of your weapons that are just tried and true, the weapons that are known to take out enemies really quickly, like these downward missiles, right? they just took out the vertical patterns of those guys really, really fast. And again, this is like a Gradius element right here. You've had areas like this in the classic Gradius series. And I died. Basically what was happening there is I got the little amoeba, or whatever you want to call them, attached to me. And I had multiples attached to me. And they were dragging me down. And since I didn't have my firepower that spread out, it was hard to hit the blocks that were above me. Ideally, you want to get into that section with one of your spread shots that can, you know, rotate around you. So watch out for these falling rocks as well. They will kill you in one hit. And watch out for this guy's beam. This is kind of an interesting boss. He shoots out this purple beam, or pink beam, and when it's touching you, it doesn't hurt you, but it constantly forces you to cycle through your weapons against your will. And that can actually be kind of dangerous when if a couple of your weapons are out, it's constantly scrolling through those weapons, and if you get touched by a bullet while it happens to land on a weapon that's out, you'll die. So you have the risk of dying in one hit on this boss if a couple of your weapons are out. But what I like to do is you can sort of like sit above him a little bit. And if you sit above him a little bit, his beam actually goes where you are. So you can sort of bait him into shooting his laser beam up, and then getting down in front of him when his laser beam's going above you, and just point blank him with one of your shots, and you can destroy that boss extremely fast. So we did get the second tier weapon available. But I prefer this first weapon that you start the game with. It's just it's probably the most useful weapon in the game, which makes me wonder why they gave it to you first instead of giving it to you later. The second weapon that I could use now, it's this sort of pattern of bullets that like rotates around you, and then you can spread it out. And it sounds useful, but it's actually not that useful. So I just stick it out with this weapon. It's just a very, very good weapon. So this level can be pretty tricky. There are a lot of ground objects that can come out after you, and I think I might actually die here. These guys have rocks flying around them. If you touch the rock, you die in one hit. They are treated as ground objects, and again, ground objects and enemies will kill you in one hit when you touch them. So you have to be very, very careful with those things. There's also fire that comes out of the ground. I want to say the fire that comes out of the ground kills you in one hit, but I don't know because I haven't got hit by it. But be careful. You've been warned. These dragons coming out of the ground as well. They look like they're taken straight from Gradius 3. And again, touching any enemy in this game will kill you in one hit, so it's good to just deal with them with a rapid firing weapon, like this spread shot. You got the worms. The worms are kind of like the worms from Dune. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the Dune movie or read the book, but they remind me of the sandworms from Dune. Now there's going to be a really tricky section coming up here. And you're going to have these enemies stationed on these cliffs. And while the cliffs don't kill you, the enemies will. Even though you're technically flying in the air, you can still touch the enemies that are on the ground. And you can also touch the rocks that fly out, which I just died by. And so you have to be really careful about these rocks that come up as well. Or maybe it's just like fire or lava or something like that. I don't know what's coming up. Sort of like volcanic tubes, I guess, but that's probably the trickiest part of the stage. You have to be very careful about that, and there's going to be some more enemies here. Again, I don't understand why they can kill you, because technically you're flying. You're up in the air, those enemies are on the ground, yet if you touch the enemies, you're dead. So you have to be very, very careful. You cannot fly over enemies in this game, unfortunately, unless you're on the side-scrolling sections, because then you're clearly in the air and not touching the enemies. That's one of the problems I have with the vertically scrolling sections in this game, is there are just some things that don't make sense like that. And you know, it's just a matter of getting used to those quirks. And it took me it took me coming to terms with those quirks to really start to appreciate the game, unfortunately. Quirks like that definitely get under my skin big time. So this boss, you basically just hit him dead center and that's it. And again, he sort of jiggles up and down whenever you hit him, which is denoting that you're doing damage. And at the same time, you hear like that little faint noise when you make contact, letting you know that you're doing damage. And this guy gives you a lot of points as well, which points in this game are good because points equal extra lives. And that boss in particular gives you a lot of points. There's been times where I've gotten to him, gotten 2 extra lives from defeating him. Alright, so we've got our final weapon ready for us on the top tier, but I don't use it. I think it's I don't think it's as useful as your other weapons. It's powerful, but it has a very, very long gap between firing. So you leave yourself wide open, which on this level, you don't want to leave yourself wide open on this level. This is actually a tough stage. You fight a lot of these little battleship cruisers, and you need to make sure that you destroy pods on the back of them. Otherwise, they keep spawning out these really annoying pink enemies that you can see. And watch out for the insta-beam on the front of them. And this is actually a decently length stage, but it's got 2 sections. The first section, you're pretty much outside like this, battling these ships. And then you go inside for really a level that's definitely a kind of a homage to the Gradius games in a way. Not like a super homage. It's not like it's ripped straight from Gradius. It's not that obvious, but you know, again, if you've played a lot of the Gradius games, you'll notice some similarities, you know, closing in walls and stuff like that, and, you know, ceilings on both top and the bottom and stuff like that. And so the second half of the stage, I think, is definitely the more challenging of the two, especially right at the very end, and I'm pretty sure I die a few times trying to get there. I'm at the point where I'm like, you know, I've got a lot of lives, I can get a little sloppy. And the good thing about dying in this game, unlike other shooters, where unlike, say, Gradius, where you lose all your power-ups, you actually get all your power-ups back when you die in this game. So, in a way, dying is actually a good thing in this game, because if I lose my weapons, I can't get my weapons back until I beat the stage. Of course, at this point, it doesn't really matter, because this is the end of the game. So, there are no more stages after this. So you've got this little walker here, he just shoots at you, but enemies are going to start coming up and bouncing behind him, and they shoot these really, really large beams, so you have to be careful. Try to take them out as quickly as you can, otherwise they just become a problem. This walker, though, you can't destroy him as far as I'm aware. He makes no sound when you attack him, and he doesn't recoil or anything like that. Which is kind of interesting. It's like one of the only objects in the game that can shoot at you. Actually, it might be the only object in the game that can shoot at you, but can't die at the same time. And he also focuses this light on you. And when he does that, I think that's kind of where, like, the bullets he has are gonna start tracking you. I don't think that made any sense, but... So again, you guys can probably see why this middle weapon is pretty much the most useful in the entire game. For one, it's got a fast firing rate. It fires out 2 beams. Both beams count when you attack, or when you make contact with enemies. So it's basically double the firepower. And by letting go of B and rapidly tapping B, you'll let it swivel back, you know, to more of like a vertical orientation. And it's just so useful in stages like these. And I'm basically shooting these wall arms that will come out. Again, you can hear a little bit of a noise when you're making contact with them, and which means you're affecting their position. You're sort of like keeping them out as wide as possible. Otherwise, if you don't fire at them, they'll clamp shut, and you can just slam into it and die in one hit. Alright, so there's going to be a mini-boss, sort of a mini-boss up here. Axelay has a tendency to throw really big enemies at you that sort of act as mini-bosses, which is pretty cool. I like that. And he's going to have a weak spot that sort of appears, and you have to destroy it. What I recommend doing is trying to destroy these ships behind him, though, because they can be a major nuisance. And that's why I selected the forward-facing missiles on this level. Even though it's the first weapon I started with in the game, actually 2 of these weapons I'm using for the final stage are some of the first weapons I got, which, you know, at this point in the game, I'd rather be using weapons I just received, right? But instead, I'm using the same weapons I've been using for the entire game, basically. So, that's another issue I have with this game. It's just kind of like, well, they give me these new weapons, but they're not really that useful, so I'm just gonna keep using the first weapons I started with because they're more useful. So, and that was my fault right there. That was dumb. There are these sort of outlets in the wall that'll just shoot up these beams the second you cross them. They're the white spots. So as you can see, you have to watch out for those. Otherwise, they will catch you off guard, especially the ones on the top. Because the ones on the top are sort of hidden by like your extra lives and your scores and stuff like that. And this part's tricky right here too. You've pretty much got to just sit dead center. And I just got absolutely destroyed there. And that part is just a major nightmare on hard mode. It's just, there's double the amount of enemies that come out. And they also fire a lot of bullets as well. And as you can see, there's actually some bullets on screen. And you've got to be careful. So, and this is the final boss, guys. There's actually 2 forms to this final boss, or technically 3. You got this part where these rocks float around him. You have to watch out for the rocks. They will kill you in one hit. Once you do that, you have to attack this core. And then after this, the boss... Well, you'll see what I mean. I'm not even going to explain it. Just attack the weak point. Again, like a lot of other bosses in the game, he sort of jiggles back and forth when you're actually doing damage to him. Alright, now these 2 balls come around, and you have to let them grab you. Otherwise, the next section of the boss won't actually start. Like, I'm not doing damage to him right now. He basically throws out mimics of your ship, clones of your ship, and this is actually kind of a tough part. I still don't know how to deal with this boss entirely, because your clone ships will fly above you, drop missiles directly on top of you, and I still have no idea how to avoid it. See, I pretty much just died. But again, dying is almost a benefit. If you come to this boss and you have 6 lives, you're kind of thankful to die because you get your weapons back. So now, the game actually fools you into thinking the stage is over. It plays the stage ending theme. But in reality, the stage isn't over yet. The guy actually comes back. You have to just shoot his weak point. Again, dead center. Watch out for the bullets, and that's pretty much it. The sort of explosions behind you, those don't actually hurt you, as far as I'm aware. So it's really just the bullets you have to watch out for, but if you sit back where the explosions are, the bullets become very, very hard to see, and you'll probably die because you don't see them. You'll run into them. So that, guys, is Axelay for the Super Nintendo. It's kind of an interesting shmup. It seems to be a fairly highly regarded shooter for the system. It does have some quirks that I'm still not 100% with. Maybe I just need to play the game more. But I think it is a solid game. I think it's a well-made game for the most part. There are a few issues, again, that I have with it that I mentioned previously. But if you've never played this game before, I do recommend giving it a try. You might end up enjoying it. You can actually get this game on the Wii Virtual Console for the Wii. And if you have a Wii U, you can get it through the Wii U's backwards compatibility mode. I don't think it's been brought to the actual Wii U yet for the Wii U Virtual Console. But so it is on Super Nintendo, obviously, but you can get it through other means if you do that sort of thing. So, but I'm going to go ahead and just leave you guys with the credits. I'm going to go ahead and head out. I'd like to say thanks for watching. If you're new to my channel, feel free to subscribe. And also, check me out on Twitch. There's a link to my Twitch account in the description box below. And you'll actually see me stream games like this. And that's actually where I first started playing this game again. Is somebody in the chat recommended I play it. And I was kind of against it, but I decided to buckle down and do it. And so I played it a few times on stream, which sort of prepared me for doing this long play video. So if you like that sort of thing, also check me out on Twitch. But all right, guys, we'll take it easy. I'll catch you guys soon.